Hey, hello, hi, welcome to and or back to the EquiTheory podcast. I am your host, Jill Treese, and this week's episode is going to be full of exciting updates and opportunities for you guys, as well as answering some training and behavioral related questions. And before you guys go, that's all your podcast is, I'm here to tell you that's changing, and I'm going to talk more about that in this episode. So let's roll the intro and get into it. Alrighty guys, so this is normally where the Patreon ad, among other ads that I have yet to apply for, go. It's about to become clear why there's no Patreon ad, and I don't want you guys to click on this episode and be like, oh my god, this is just going to be one big ad for Patreon. So I'm going to try and keep it concise, but there are updates that I kind of want to go over and just generally explain things, because it's been a hot minute since I've been on the podcast. And full disclosure, this is actually the second time I'm recording this episode. So currently it is the 6th of July, 2021, and I recorded this episode last week, towards the end of the week, and I thought I had everything the way that I wanted it, and then I just didn't post the episode and never unplugged my mic. And generally, at this point I should know that that's a sign that I gotta fix something. Something's not right. It's not sitting well with me. So I did end up doing that today, actually. Just a couple hours ago, I spent, I think, probably 3 hours working on this and making sure that everything is the way that I want it. And I'm still going to have a lot more work to do, because I have to, when you update one thing, you have to update it everywhere else that you've posted about it. So anyway, that is just some behind the scenes things. But yeah, it's been a lot to try and work out the Patreon, and I don't want to make it like this giant deal, but the Patreon is something that I really care about, and it's a way that I can offer you guys, training and behavior services, but it's been posing some issues with the podcast. So, I kind of just want to go over why I'm changing it and why it is the way it is, because some people that are currently patrons or were patrons or might want to be patrons, I feel like this information is useful, because the tiers are a little bit different now. We have a $1, $5, $10, and $35 tier. And before you go, whoa, what the heck happened? I'm going to explain it. So in short, the reason why is that I just can't justify my time allocation and the price point, because it's just I did a lot of comparing and researching on what services and at what price points other behavioral consultants offer their services. And there is such a wide range, and there's no real standard. It goes from $10 per consult per hour to $100. And I was like, oh God, I don't think anybody would want to pay $100, especially since I am yet to be certified. So, while that's something that I'm working on, I don't really have time to go through the application process right now. And it's on my to-do list, and I'm hoping to get that certification by next year. But I am a full-time student, so that makes it a little bit difficult. But before I keep rambling and getting ahead of myself, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go over this and why. So essentially, there are a couple reasons. 1 being time constraints, 2 being the podcast saturation and answering delay, and 3 being the consult quality. So under time constraints, I'm a full-time grad student, and I'm an employee at this training and sales farm that I work at. And so my schedule's really unpredictable and chaotic. So, the way the Patreon was originally set up, there is just so many little things that I have to do. And to be completely honest, they're not worth my time, and they're not worth your money. And so I've just been trying to figure out how to prioritize things and make it affordable for everyone as best I can. And make it to where I can accommodate my schedule, because I've been overpromising myself. And as a result, there are some of you who might be listening that have been like, yeah, I didn't get what I wanted out of the Patreon. And that is my worst nightmare ever. That's not what I want. And it's very bad for business. And so I think that, and a lot of you have been so supportive with it, because I've talked about it on my Instagram quite a bit. And I really appreciate those of you that are like, please take your time, whatever you need to do to keep doing it, do that. So I'm trying to make it to where I can keep doing the podcast, keep doing it well, and keep doing a bunch of other things at the same time, and not just kind of, dedicating my time to a bunch of different miscellaneous things that is inconsequential. So, I'd love to be able to offer reviews and consults to every single person at every single price point, but I just can't feasibly do it because, it's just not sensical logically to give out a bajillion training consults at the $5 tier, because everyone would love to pay $5 to have a phone call for sometimes 2 to 3 hours, where I'm just discussing ponies with them and giving advice and working through things. But at some point, and this has always been a tough point for me, raised in the South, we don't talk about money down here, and it's very uncomfortable to ask for money or, price yourself reasonably. But the reality is it's worth more than that. And so I am trying to get to a point where I have the gall, if you will, to or the nerve to price myself semi-well. So like I said, some behavior consultants that I look at, it's $100 per hour-long phone call or what have you. And I'm not charging that. I'll say that up front. But for those services, it is $35, but you get a bunch of other stuff, and I'll go over that briefly in a moment. But, as a student, an employee, and someone trying to do all of the social media stuff, I just have to value my time, because as a lot of you probably have noticed, the past couple of months of this podcast have been chaotic, and my schedule's been a bit unpredictable, and I just want to, really over the past couple of months, it has been my goal to narrow my to-do list, because I've started keeping a bullet journal, and it has served me so well. I started in January, and I have been using it religiously since then, and it's probably a bit more than, it's not the most extravagant bullet journal, but it's also not the basic wham bam thank you ma'am. I probably put more time into it than is necessary, but it is a meditative thing, and it helps me sleep better at night knowing that I have everything that I need to do and need to know written down. But I mean, I sometimes would spend 2 hours writing things that I needed to do down in my to-do list section. And that's ridiculous. I shouldn't have to allocate time to making my to-do list because it's that long. So, now I've just really made it on my to-do list to narrow my focus so that I can keep creating content and not just spend all my time planning things. Because I want to do more videos on YouTube and make more podcast episodes, post more on Instagram, things like that. I just want to get back to just the content creation and not so much behind the scenes stuff. So as a result, that is where this is coming from, because, if I'm not making money from it at this point, I'm really struggling to do it, because I'm at a point in my life where I do not need to be dependent on my parents anymore. And I'm trying to move into independence. And as many of you know, horses are expensive. And at present, I cannot afford my own horse or myself at this point. So I have really been getting on top of my finances and budgeting, and I can't justify not making money where I need to be making money. And I hate to be so financially focused here, but it's really, really difficult to just not be making any money and putting all of this effort into it. So pity party, woe is me. But this is why time constraints and monetary reasons. But the other reasons for this change is that the podcasts are just becoming Q&A forums for patrons. And I love answering training questions and getting to just talk for, hours on end about somebody's particular situation with their horse and work through all the possibilities and what you could do here. It's a great thought experiment for me. And I feel like it really helps increase my knowledge and awareness of training, I guess. And so it's been wildly mutually beneficial, but I have noticed a lot of people are sort of falling off the podcast or listening, and the Q&A episodes don't tend to get a whole lot of listens. And I think that's a reflection of the saturation, because logistically, like if I have, say, 40 patrons and each week maybe 2 people ask a question, well, then the next episode I have to answer those 2 questions because these are paying customers. And the list goes on. If it's 5 per week or the next week it's 7, then all of a sudden I've got a mountain of questions I have to answer and not a whole lot of time to do it in without making a ginormous episode. And while I do love the 3-hour-long episodes, it is very difficult to do that. And also, it's a full consult. Like I'm working through every single possible angle I can get to, providing resources and doing everything I can to fully answer the question. And a lot of them are at the $5 tier, which is totally fine. That's a service I offered. But $5 for spending, 30 to 45 minutes answering a question is not really fair to me, which I just feel like such a brat saying that. I hate that. I'm an adult. You're fine. Just self-assurance here. But so I'm getting to a point where I need to take those questions to a private setting. So instead of, for $5, you can send me a question and I'll answer it on the podcast for, an unlimited amount of time. Now I am moving that to private to where people can sign up for the tier of the Patreon that offers those consults, and you have an hour to just talk to me about your situation, your horse, your backstory, everything I need to know, and any suggestions I make. If it's an angle you've already approached, you can be like, oh, nope, we've been there, done that, and I will move on and, attack it from a different angle. So it's a much better consult quality because, you're able to immediately answer me, whereas in the podcast, you can sometimes get left feeling like, oh, I forgot to say that, or I should have explained that differently. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Or, yeah, I see why she's answering it that way, but that's not, it didn't make sense. So I really want to eliminate that error and up the quality of the consults. And, doing that over Zoom or phone call or what have you is a lot better way to get that accomplished. So, it's just kind of becoming more of an advice column that I'd like, and it's sacrificing the quality of the answer and the podcast and the listeners. You guys aren't getting the same quality that you'd like, and the diversity of having guests on. And if I have a guest, sometimes I might have to push their episode to answer a patron question, or the patrons get pushed and they're like, what the heck, I'm paying for this, why aren't you answering? And it's not logistic anymore. It was at the beginning when I didn't have that many, but now that we're getting a little bit bigger on the Patreon, that's got to change. And, it's just growing pains and working out what needs to happen. So this is why these things are changing, and I'd like to make the podcast somewhere where I can interview more people and talk about the things that are going on with my horses, how I've worked through different issues. I mean, I have a document, the several-page document full of ideas and topics that I'd like to cover and deep dive into, and I just haven't had time because every episode has been, okay, well, I've got to answer this question, so that'll get pushed to next week, and then it just never gets done. So being able to just schedule at any time with somebody to have an hour-long consult, I can put that into my schedule, get it done, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, we're good. So it makes it a little bit more flexible and allows me to, have a better quality. I'm beating a dead horse at this point. Pardon the expression. I think PETA said we should say feeding a fed horse. So we'll go with that. But, the biggest point here is that I think it's okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, I know you will, that there are so many episodes covering so many different issues and topics at this point that I feel like there's a library out there on my podcast now where even if your specific question isn't addressed, you'll be inspired by the way we work through other, horse and owner issues. So, if your horse has a phobia of, say, fly spray, you can listen to an episode on that, because I think I've done like 2 at this point. But you can also apply an episode on hoof handling or a fear of the water hose or something like that. You can apply that to your situation. There's the same principles every time. So I would like to move the, patron asking question thing to a more private, specific thing. Because, usually people aren't writing in unless they just don't want to go back and listen to an episode and want one specifically with the details about their horse, which is fine as well. But I'm no longer offering that for the reason that you can go back and listen to it. So I feel like it's fair. There's so much free content out there. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but most people charge for that sort of thing and keep it behind a paywall. So the fact that it's out there for free, I think, is pretty fair. So hopefully you guys listening won't be too upset about that, and will understand where I'm coming from, that it's just growing pains. And the Patreon's gotten more popular, and I love it and I appreciate it. I love our community on there, and it's awesome, but it's just gotta adapt as things happen, because unfortunately this is not my full-time job, and as much as I would like it to be, oh my god, that would be so much fun. I can't justify the time for it. So in saying that, if you're not interested in becoming a patron at all, this should serve to be the announcement that more things are coming, and I'm planning on doing a lot more things on this podcast platform here, than just answering training behavior questions. When I switched the podcast from Equine in Theory to Jet Real Podcast, it was because I just wanted to talk about my life a little bit and just have a place to vent and maybe share some advice and experiences with you guys. And I kind of want to get back to that a little bit more, not so much the personal life stuff, because, it's boring, because all I do is work. But, I want to be able to cover different topics, time management, mental health, just working with the horses, anecdotal experiences, and sharing stories, as well as having guests on and topic discussions. Like I did the dominance theory deep dive. I'd like to do a lot more things like that. Of course, those are going to require a lot more time. So maybe now you're understanding why I'm trying to limit my time spent on patron questions, when I feel like a lot of them can be answered in previous episodes if you look. And if you are listening and interested in finding a specific episode, usually you can just type in EquiTheory and then some keywords in whatever podcast service you use. But you can also go to equitheory.podbean.com and, you can search for an episode there. But that said, I'm kind of going to go through the tier breakdown. So on Patreon, there are 4 different options that I offer at present. So the first one is the EquiTheory tip jar. It's just $1 a month subscription. Basically, you just get to support the podcast and you get a little shout out. So it just allows you guys to make a contribution, and you get a shout out on air and show your support for the podcast. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate it. So if you're not, willing to do a full commitment or whatever, and you can spare $1 a month, it would greatly help the podcast and me to be able to dedicate more time to it. Because the reality is, people put their time and energy where the money is, and I'm in a situation financially at the moment where I have to do that. So if the podcast is profitable, if you will, then I can dedicate more time to it. So anyway, the $5 tier is a baby theorist, EquiTheorist, excuse me. So as a baby EquiTheorist, you get to use your voice and have a say in the podcast's upcoming content, get discounts on merch, a shout out on air, and access to an exclusive community of like-minded equestrians via the EquiTheory Discord server. So basically, this is the Discord server and merch discount tier. You can join our community for $5 a month, and it's such a cool place. I am not as active on there as I would like to be, just because of the aforementioned reasons, but there are so many amazing people in there. I've got great mods, and, you guys, there are so many different channels galore. Oh my God. From pony pics to book reviews to nutrition, hoof health. We've got it all. So, everybody has a different area of expertise. So like for me, Zoe has kissing spine. So I had to pour a lot of time and energy into kissing spine research. And that means that I know a heck of a lot about kissing spine at this point. So as with every horse, they are individuals. So each owner, rider, handler, what have you, has likely had to do a lot of research in a particular area. So being a part of the community, you get access to their wealth of knowledge as well. So there's that. At the $10 tier, a respected EquiTheorist, you get all of those benefits, but you also get to join the live Q&As. So we do this over Zoom. Every month I post a poll to see what time works best for everyone and then schedule it. And they usually go for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. And, I just send out a link and schedule it, and then everybody jumps on, and we usually start out talking about horses and issues, but by the end of it, everybody's just talking about a bunch of nonsense, and it goes so many different directions, and it's just nice to chat with a bunch of cool pony people that care about positive reinforcement, and just everybody has a different walk of life. So even though you're coming there typically to ask me a question, everybody else jumps in with their experiences and their thoughts and their research. So you're not just getting my perspective, you're also getting a lot of other well-versed people's experience and knowledge. So very cool, very cool. That's the $10 tier. And the final tier is the $35 tier. So this one is replacing the $20 and $25 tier just because it didn't really make sense to me to try and put some weird time constraints and lower it, because I tried to do lower tiers where you would have 30 minutes phone call and 15 minutes of video, and just try to add different price points, but it just doesn't make sense, and honestly I don't have time to do that, and it didn't seem worth it for me at that price point. So I'm now offering the $35 tier, which is basically online training. I'll go through the breakdown with you here quickly. So as an enlightened EquiTheorist, you have access to all of the benefits of the lower tiers, plus a subscription to online training with Jill. You'll be able to submit up to 30 minutes of video for Jill to review and send you feedback. And side note here, it's up to you on how you would like to break down that time. So, you can send, oh my God, I'm having trouble with math. You can send 6 5-minute videos, per month, or you could send 1 30-minute long video, however you want to break it up. And you also have access to a 60-minute phone call or Zoom consult for any training or behavior questions you have that I will answer live with you, so we can discuss your issues and what you're running into, where you'd like to go. If you just need training inspiration, whatever, I am here for you, whatever you need. And that'll also work into the video consults. With those, I will send a video file back. We'll just upload it unlisted to YouTube and send you that of me going over what I see and what I think could improve or be better and what you're already doing well. And yeah, so you can also have our phone call consult. You have the option to have that recorded as a podcast episode. I will say it is up to me whether or not I decide to make that an episode, but regardless, I will record it and send it to you as an audio file, and, everybody has that option at this tier. Even if you don't want it to become a podcast episode, I can record it and send you the audio file just so you'll have it to be able to listen back to if you're anything like me and can't remember everything all the time. So you also get discounts on additional training consults. So, if the one wasn't enough or you run into a different issue, you get a 20% discount on your next one. And you'll get custom resources and information tailored to you and your horse. If you need nutrition advice or hoof health advice, I am not a professional in those areas, but I can direct you to people who are and the resources and research that I have found. And yeah, you get the Discord, Q&As, merch discounts, shout out, all of that. So that is essentially the Patreon update for you. If that's something that you guys are interested in, you can feel free to join and sign up at patreon.com/EquiTheory, EquiTheory. But I guess I should say that, it's a monthly subscription, so you get charged for the day you join every month. And if you cancel, there is no repercussions. You have it until your next set pay date. So if you join on the 1st and you cancel on the 5th, you'll have it until the next month 1st. So there are no fees or anything like that attached, or you can sign up for the annual subscription and have it for a year. And I think it's a 16% discount for what you would pay if you just paid every single month, and have access to that. But yeah, so also outside of that, I am working on creating just individual services. So if you just want a training video review or just a phone call review, you don't want to deal with Patreon or you don't want any of the other benefits, I am working on making that an option on my website. I could do it right now, but I'm working on getting it set up on my website that has all of the information and explanations for things like that. That is coming, but for those of you listening, if it is not up yet on JETEquiTheory.com, then you can just shoot me an email at EquiTheory@gmail.com and we can set something up and work it out. But if you're listening to this a couple months down the line, that will probably be up on JETEquiTheory.com under the services tab. That's what we're working on right now. So, yeah, basically that's the Patreon update. And now I guess I have some time just to talk about what's been going on before we get into the questions. So, a lot of you it doesn't make sense to me, but I also listen to podcasts like this. So I guess this is why, because it's mildly interesting. But, just some updates of what's been going on in old Jill's life is that we have finally moved all of the horses. It's so weird to talk about this because when I recorded this episode last week, we hadn't, and I was complaining about that. So now I've just deleted all of that. And now I've got this. But so different update now. We have gotten all of the horses moved officially. Everyone is here. All the babies, all the thoroughbreds, all the oldies, all the brood mares, all the geldings. We got everybody. And so it's so nice to finally have all the horses here. But as of today, I am still feeding everyone. We've had a little bit of an issue getting the people that normally feed moved. And so been dealing with that. But I think that they're starting tomorrow. So hopefully that will mean that I will be freed up to have some more time to train and ride and work with the horses. So hopefully there will be some episodes covering what I'm doing, with the horses, because I don't think you guys want a podcast episode about going through my feeding routine. That's more of a YouTube video sort of thing. But yeah, so that's where we're at. I am so tired of feeding AM and PM 7 days a week, 29 horses. Oh my God, it's so much. So yeah, it's been a lot scheduling wise, but hopefully I will be freed up and able to take a break. Speaking of break, this is a perfect segue here. Thank you, Jill, for that one. On the 14th, I am leaving for Colorado. Going with the boyfriend on a little vacay because he was like, "Hey dude, you're really stressed all the time. Are you good?" And I was like, "What is good? Am I not supposed to be stressed all the time?" I know the answer is no, but that is how I've been living. I've just been running on cortisol and adrenaline, and I need to stop. So I'll be gone the 14th through the 20th, and just living it up, exploring nature, and I'm excited to be gone, but my first thought every time I think about it is the amount of stress that I'll be feeling being gone from everything. So there might be a break in the podcast. I might try to get an episode recorded in advance, but it's really just all going to depend on my schedule, because I have a feeling this next week is going to be a bit insane, because a lot is changing again. And guys, I cannot wait, and I cannot tell you how badly that I want to have a routine. Every day is different and unpredictable, and I know that is such as the nature of horses, but I would like to just be like, okay, from these hours I'm working, or from these hours to these hours I'm working with horses, and then I go see clients at this hour, and here I have time to do schoolwork or the podcast or YouTube editing, filming, and also eating. I need time to eat, or I can schedule appointments here. It would be nice to just know what my day is going to look like and not have to be constantly rearranging and planning. I just cannot wait for the stress to end. But then I'm sure after I get into a routine this July month, everything's going to get turned upside down again, because on the 16th of August, I start my classes back. And I will be taking psychopharmacology, psychopathology, and substance abuse and addiction, I believe, is what I'm taking. So that is for my Master's of Clinical Mental Health Counseling degree that I'm in pursuit of. We just got all the eggs in different baskets right now, so I'm really trying to streamline everything so that things are simple, effective, and of high quality. And this Patreon thing has been weighing on me for months. I've wanted to change it for a long time, didn't know how to go about it, and just have had to dedicate a lot of time and thought about it, to it, I guess. And now it's done. It's up. These are the options, and I will have some outside of the Patreon available on my website soon. And, the merch too, I should say, I've revamped it, because it started out on customizedgirl.com, which was a nightmare. And then I moved to Teespring, which was also a nightmare. Oh my God, there is no organizational system. And half of the designs that I ordered were trash, and I emailed them rather aggressively several times, because I was like, I can't put my name on this. Why are you sending this to people if this is what it looks like for me? What are you doing? And I thought I had it sorted out, but it kept being a mess. So the Teespring is gone. Don't check that out anymore. So now it will be offered on my website coming very soon. I'm working on it through an extension that actually works with my website, Squarespace, or it's hosted by Squarespace, I should say. And it's called Printful. And not that any of you care about this, maybe 3 of you will, that are like, I would like to get into merchandise and apparel. So I'm working on that at the moment. It's just I have to upload files and set them on each individual piece of merch and get them looking nice, and then have to adjust the prices and things like that, because they're doing all the manufacturing and production of it, and they send it out to you, and I don't have to touch it, but I do have to get everything positioned where I want it, and then post it on my site, and then I get a percentage. So, that's what I'm working on at the moment. I have so many things to do all of the time, but hopefully I'll just get a baseline of merch posted. And, I've had several people reach out to me about redoing logos and designs for merch and stuff, and I just have not been able to find time to just schedule time to talk to anybody, because my schedule has just been crazy and I'm so tired of it. I want to be able to be responsive and on top of things, instead of this person that just doesn't respond to anyone, which is what I have been, and I'm over it. I don't want it. But yeah, so basically, I don't know if this is interesting at all. I feel like it's a very bad podcast at this point, but I feel like I got to get the updates out there and let you guys know what's happening with Patreon and what's happening with me, where I've been, because I think it's been 2 weeks now since I posted an episode, which is just not cool for me. It really bothers me a whole lot, and I want to be consistent. But I do have plans to have several guests on the episode or on the podcast coming up. And I would love to tell you who they are, but I will not. But I can give you some hints. It is in relation to saddles and saddle fitting. So if you're interested in that, that's coming up soon. I'll probably ask on JETEquiTheory, like what questions you guys have for a podcast episode. And I'll also ask on the Patreon. So if you become one, your question will get answered. But yeah, I think that is about everything. I guess on Zoe, where I just haven't had any time to work with her. And it's stressing me out really bad because I'm like, oh my God, I have to get my horse like rehabbed and going. And I have not had time to do that. But hopefully if the feeders take over tomorrow, then I can start working with her. And then I'm going to leave for a week. Oh my God. Do you see why I'm stressed? It's just ridiculous. But I've got to come up with a training program for her and to get her rehabbed and back into some work. So, oops, I bumped my mic because my cat's on my desk now. Zuko, you're disruptive. Yeah, so Zuko, no, settle down, pick a spot. He's like, but I want to be seated on your laptop, so I'm going to put him in my lap. Apologies. Anyway, yeah, I think that's about all I got. I'm moved, I'm settled in, the horses are moved, they're settled in. I'm excited to start making some frickin' content for a content creator. I have not been making a lot of content, and my Instagram is showing that because wowee, are we losing followers like crazy. It's so annoying. So if you're listening and you're not following my Instagram, please do that. This is a pity beg. JETEquiTheory. It needs followers. It's dropping like flies. And I'm not really sure why. It's kind of frustrating. I mean, I guess lately it's just been pictures of horses instead of me riding them. And people aren't enjoying that. But you know what? The captions are full of spice and entertainment, I think. Probably not, though. But yeah, so I'm ready to get things back on a certain level of quality that I just haven't been able to maintain lately. And I think that's about it. So those are the updates on the Patreon and on me. And now I'm going to go through some of the final Patreon questions that will ever be on the EquiTheory podcast for now. So without further ado, let us get into answering some pony training questions, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Okay, so question number 1 comes from patron Sarah. So Sarah asks, for about 2 months I've been training 2 horses that have been pasture ornaments, a 3-year-old colt and a 3-year-old filly. When they arrived, they didn't know anything: haltering, stalls, brushes, tying, no food manners, etc. They've been making so much progress, but their feet are a huge problem. When they arrived, their hooves hadn't been trimmed in a year, and they had infections in most of their hooves. Not thrush, another one whose name I can't remember. It's a bacterium that forms a little hole and grows inside the hoof. I wonder if that's a keratoma, maybe? That's what I had with Bo. I am not a hoof care professional, so I'm not sure. From what I know, maybe it's an abscess. I think that might be it. Yeah, abscesses are not fun. Diet. From what I know, they never learned how to pick up their feet, and the only times their hooves were trimmed, they were probably roughly forced into a wooden horse cage, and their hooves were trimmed with a grinder. You can imagine the association they have with their hooves being trimmed now. I work with them using only positive reinforcement because they're both so sensitive and reactive. But the problem is when I try to pick up their feet, the filly always tries to kick me, and the colt has bitten me a few times. I obviously don't punish them because I know they are reacting so strongly, probably because of their pain in their hooves and very aversive experiences with having their feet trimmed. I have tried slowly desensitizing, counter-conditioning with treats, and touching their legs with my hands with an object they're not afraid of. I tried picking up the hooves more often during one session, less often, not trying at all for a week, and then trying it again, and I'm out of options and very discouraged. 2 months later, they let me touch their shoulders, but anything lower than that, and they try to kick or bite me. I need help, please. Okay, so I am actually familiar with this situation, full disclosure, listeners out there, that we talked about this in one of the Zoom Q&A meetings, and so it's a complicated situation because it is very dangerous, and it's tricky. So I suggested a couple of things the last time we were on the Zoom Q&A, and it seems like there's not a whole lot of progress being made, which is frustrating, and it is just the way of horses. You just have to go through a process of trial and error until you can really figure out what works best for each individual horse and how you can get them comfortable. So there are a couple of different ways to approach this. The one way might be to reroute for a bit and work on being able to give some sort of sedative, either orally or IV. And obviously, that would be something you need to collaborate with your vet on and try to get them help in that situation. Obviously, you don't want to add any stressors or terrifying situations, but if at all possible, being able to sedate them to get through this emergency would be my primary recommendation, because the reality is it's very, very difficult to train through pain. And if the horses are just in a lot of pain constantly in their feet and aren't getting any better through a corrective nutritional program, which I believe we discussed last time, and hopefully patron Sarah has taken that on. I edited this question a while ago, and I thought I would remember, but I don't remember whether or not she said that in her original message. But so I would work towards that, working with a vet and a farrier and trying to get to a point where you can get their feet to a good stage. And then it's unfortunate sometimes that it works like that. But in an emergency situation, which I would classify this as, nobody's life and death danger at the moment, but it is a situation where the human is in direct danger and the horses are suffering and can't understand that you're trying to help. So sometimes I do believe that it is best to go a route of trying to sedate them. They make oral sedatives like democidin gel, which can be quite pricey, but will do better to lower that anxiety and help the horses just be in a lower state of arousal so that they aren't quite so volatile. And then you can work from there. Obviously, difficult to use positive reinforcement with a sedated horse, but you can at least get your hands on their legs perhaps and give them lots of scratchies and get a really good association going. And maybe something you could try is getting one of those back scratcher hands and sticking it through and scratch, or maybe you could stick it through a fence if they're okay with that, and scratching them on their wither, and then maybe extending it so they get used to seeing it extended, and scratching them on their bum and on their barrel. And it might take a little bit to get over that as well, because that is a scary thing, but realizing that maybe this does feel nice, and then you could work down their legs that way. And obviously I would stay under threshold at all costs. Something else that I would work on with these horses would be mat training, getting them to learn to put their feet on mats. Something else you could do is get a hoof stand and teach them to put their feet up on the hoof stand, and then let you start handling their feet that way. That might be a situation where it's different enough that the association won't be so strong, because in situations like this where the horses have been abused and they've learned to associate it with someone running their hand down their legs, and they're like, no, you can't have my leg. Absolutely not. Maybe putting out a hoof stand and teaching them to put their feet up on the hoof stand. Obviously, it would need to be a comfortable one that it wouldn't hurt their feet to put it on. You could teach them to do that. Teach them to pick their feet up from a distance. And you could click and treat, even if they're moving away from you. When you, if you're using, say, a pool noodle, and you go to touch their leg and they lift their foot off the ground, click and treat for that. And then they're like, wait, what? And then try and click before they move away, but click for the lifting, and then get that shaped and put on a cue. And then maybe you can work your way towards being able to hold the foot up with the pool noodle from a distance or something. A lot of people have like an extender stick and they attach a pool noodle to the end of it. So it could be a little sturdier that you might be able to like kind of rub it around and keep you safe from a distance, but still be able to work like that. So I would give that a chance. And, Sarah, if you need more one-on-one direction, I would reach out to me, because this seems like a situation that is a little bit more demanding than that of an answer on the podcast. So please feel free to reach out to me or another professional like Adele or other behaviorists to see if you can't figure out some sort of training protocol, because obviously we don't want you to get hurt, and we need these horses to get better. But it's very hard to feel comfortable giving advice, especially in a situation that is particularly dangerous, without being able to see what's going on, because it could be any number of things. It could be that the horses are simply not responsive to the training. It could be that your click timing is a little delayed. It could be a myriad of things that are going on, but I know it's so discouraging and like wildly frustrating. You're like, I'm trying to help you and you guys are being so ungrateful. But I just really try and stay encouraged. And, they're not doing it because they just don't want to be cooperative. They're doing it, like you said, because they're in pain and they're scared. And you are an amazing person for wanting to help these two poor horses. And they're very, very lucky to be in your care. So keep it up, keep your head up. Reach out to me or someone else for additional help on this. And I'd be happy to jump on a call with you and discuss it a little bit further. Okay, I'm going to move on from that question to question number 2. Comes from patron Tegan, who is from Washington. Thank you for including the state and or location you're from. I'm keeping it general. I'm not going to give away last names and cities and addresses or anything like that, but I just think it's fun. Tegan from Washington. Okay, Tegan writes, I have a rather theoretical question for you this month. I've been reading some Karen Pryor books, and in the context of obedience classes, she mentions that clicker-trained dogs will eventually not need to be clicked and reinforced to perform behaviors. She writes, the clicker's value in shaping new behavior or refining details, is in shaping new behavior and refining details. Its value is not necessary in exhibiting behavior the animal has already learned. What about the extinction? Then Tegan continues. What about the extinction that may occur in asking for a behavior that is not followed by a reward? And in your research and experience, have you found this concept applies to dogs and not horses? So there's another question here from Tegan, but I'm going to answer this bit first. So yes, I do remember studying this quite a bit when I first started clicker training, and also had to take it for my undergraduate psychology course. I had to take learning theory. So the principle that Karen is describing is an intermittent schedule of reinforcement, I believe. I could be mixing up my terms. I don't think I am. But it's kind of like trainers like to use this as sort of the same way that a slot machine works. So every time you perform the behavior, which would be pulling the lever on a slot machine, you have a chance of getting the reinforcer, which would be, the jackpot. And even though you're not getting reinforced every time, you keep pulling the lever because there's a chance that you might get reinforced. So once a behavior is established and solid on cue, you have a couple of options. So let's say I have a horse that knows how to, let's say we're working under saddle, and I have a horse that knows how to walk on when I say the verbal cue, walk on. And this is a behavior that I've worked on and I've established duration with. My horse is very good at this. She responds every time. I might not have to click that behavior every time, and I can reinforce with a tertiary reinforcer. I believe cues are tertiary reinforcers. It's been a hot minute since I've studied all the terminology, but the point is I could cue her trot. And since trot also has an established high reinforcement value, then there are positive associations with that word, because reinforcers are, obviously the primary reinforcers elicit regular associations, but the classical conditioning process that happens with secondary and tertiary reinforcers is the same that happens with the bridge signal or your clicker and the food. So when you give a horse the food after clicking, they begin to associate the click with food. The same thing happens with cues. So they know cue, behavior, click, treat. So the cue is a predictor that they're going to get a treat if they perform that behavior. And sometimes that treat, proverbial treat, is a cue to perform another behavior that they really enjoy doing, because now that behavior has a positive association. It feels good. And Shauna Karish talks a lot about this in her Clicker Training Horses 101 podcast, about like ridden behaviors and working on collection and ridden work and things like that. The intrinsic value of having that association developed with the activity itself. So yes, you can. It takes a long time to get there, and dogs are generally a bit quicker at picking this up. They're generally higher energy and really, really intelligent. Not to dog on horses, but dogs tend to be a little bit more, what are we doing next? And horses can be like that, but it varies horse to horse. So generally, I recommend, if you're going to put something on an intermittent reinforcement schedule, you need to be really diligent about how you're applying that. So being sure that you're cueing things as reinforcement that the horse knows how to do, and then clicking at the end. So that's would be forming a behavior chain. So say I cue my horse to walk, we're walking along, and I say good, which is a keep going signal. Okay, and trot, which would be my cue for trot. Then we trot a couple of steps and maybe do a circle or so, and maybe we canter, maybe we walk, and then I click and treat. That takes a lot of training to get to that point without having to stop and click and treat quite a bit more frequently. But it can be done. Georgia Bruce is a para-Olympic dressage rider, I believe. Is she Olympic? I don't know. I'd have to fact check that. But she is a para-dressage rider who rides at a pretty high level of dressage, if I'm not mistaken, and does this quite well. I mean, she can go through a whole dressage test without needing to click and treat. And Shauna Karish is another one that talks a lot about this. So there's a lot to be said for like a fixed reinforcement schedule and a intermittent reinforcement schedule. Intermittent schedules have been proven to strengthen behavior because the animal doesn't know when the reinforcement is coming. So if you click on every fourth step of walk, the first couple of steps of walk are going to be kind of blah, blah, blah. And then as they get closer and closer to when they would get clicked, it might get a little bit more round over the back, a little bit more energy, a little bit more push from behind, and then you click and treat. So putting it on an intermittent schedule keeps the horse's quality the whole time. So if the horse gets clicked for 1 step or for 7 steps or for 25 steps or for 3 steps, of course, like I said, this is something that you can only begin to establish after you have got the cue really solid and the horse is responding every time, and you work diligently to increase behavior, but then varying that, the duration and the amount of steps or whatever, then you can get a better behavior, and it's proven to really cement the cues and the reinforcement because it varies, which seems counterintuitive, but that is what research shows us. So yes, you can, and it does apply to horses. It applies to all beings. Everyone that has the thinking brain responds to operant conditioning and the laws of it, but it is something that I would only recommend to pretty experienced clicker trainers, and it might be something that you would want to try with a dog first so that you get a little bit more experience with it, because sometimes horses, I find, well, it varies horse to horse, but some of them, if it's too confusing, they're kind of like, I'd rather just chill, because most horses tend to be energy conservers since they're prey animals, whereas dogs are predators, and they're not necessarily energy conservers. They're more expenders. They like energy and being loud and going and doing, and horses are a little bit more peaceful in that way. So Tegan's second question is, if I wanted to replace the clicker with a physical bridge signal, as example for riding, like touch, what kind of signal would I recommend using? I'm thinking a specific touch to the withers. So for me personally, I prefer a verbal bridge signal. So I use a very specific sound that I can make consistently with my mouth. Some people can whistle very consistently, and that's probably the most convenient one to use. My whistler is a little bit inconsistent. I have to have a moist mouth, and I live in Arkansas, and it gets very hot here, and I don't always have a water bottle on hand, so sometimes I can't whistle. So I choose not to use that one. I make a sk sound. The only issue I've run into that is in loud environments, it's kind of hard to hear. A lot of clicker trainers use a sound. So either one of those that, you can make, that's what I would really recommend doing, something that's loud and clear. Or you could say yes, but you have to make sure that whatever you choose, especially if it's a word, you say it the exact same way, the exact same volume, and the exact same tone every single time. You can't say yes, yes, yep, you got it. Like it has to be yes, yes, yes every single time. You have to say it the same exact way. So if you wanted to do a touch, you can. I know my buddy Kane Meyer from California that I had on this podcast for a series over positive reinforcement riding, they used touch with a deaf Mustang. But it's not something that I would personally choose to use, simply for the reason that sometimes I might put my hand down. I might set my hand on their wither, and I don't want it to be confusing. So that's generally why I would go for a vocal cue. They make clickers, like clicker rings, that you could slip over your finger. I use one from, I forgot what it's called. It's linked on my website under the positive reinforcement equipment tab. But they make this little thing that can slip over your finger. It's quite big, but they make smaller rings that you can put over like your ring finger or on your thumb, and you could actually click that while you're riding. Because the way you hold your reins with you're holding ice cream cones, if you had it on your pointer finger, your thumb could easily click it. Again, the only issue with that is you might accidentally click it sometimes. So depends on personal preference, and it might be trial and error, but it's all up to you and what works best for you. If you think you can avoid keeping it from being confusing with a physical touch, like a double tap or something with two fingers, I don't know. To me, that's like the horse is not a MacBook, and they might not register that the same, or that's different from any other touch. And you might have to really work on making sure that they understand the difference between regular touch and the bridge, but that's what I'll say on that one. So the final question for this episode comes from patron Charlotte. Charlotte writes, "Hi Jill, thanks for the answer to my question before about Max, my 4-year-old off-the-track thoroughbred gelding. And they say that they've treated him for ulcers and at the point where they can groom his whole body now. He eats low NSC grain. Everything is great, wonderful, fantastic, but the problem is the farrier." So I'll summarize this message because it's quite long and I read it earlier, but essentially they had worked a really long time getting this horse to be good with the farrier, and he was picking his feet up. He was great. And then he had an accident where he had to be on stall rest and have a lot of, mandatory vet care and farrier work that resulted in some not so fantastic experiences. And now he's got a pain and fear association back with his feet. So now Charlotte writes, he is currently sound and happy as a clam, but I sprained my hand and fractured my thumb, so training options are a bit limited. I know we have the farrier appointment looming in a couple weeks and I'm dreading it. My current ideas are to make that area a really good place, but just being committed to a week or two of feeding him his grain there. I've just been hanging out, feeding alfalfa, and working easy targeting, but it hasn't made him want to be there anymore. So I'm hoping grain, which is a higher value, could help. So first thoughts there, yes, higher value reinforcers can definitely make a difference. I would recommend that if you're going to work in an area where he's not super comfortable with, is develop cues and behaviors that you would want in that area outside of it, and then gradually work closer and closer and closer to that area on all those same behaviors that he knows. And if you notice his stress levels go up at all, go back a step And if it's literally a step, go back, decrease his anxiety, get him really solid, then take another step, then get really solid there and keep working and keep him under threshold so he's never getting worried throughout the whole process. And then you can get there. So using a higher value reinforcer will definitely help that, but be careful when using grain that you're not going to accidentally be feeding too much. So, maybe if you use grain, if your barn maybe makes up the grain, pre-makes it, you can actually take it out of that grain so that you're keeping the portions the same and not supplying too many things. You could also, just try different treats and see what he likes. For Zoe, her high value reinforcer is carrots. So I will often feed her those for behaviors that she's a little bit more iffy about. But you have to be careful with that because we do want to keep low sugar, low starch diets going, because any sugar and starch is going to have an effect on the feet, and it's not going to be a good one. Some other things to consider would be, if you haven't already, listening to the Feed Room Chemist podcast episodes over hoof care and some episodes on the Humble Hoof over nutrition and diet, so that you're ensuring that your horse is getting the proper vitamin and nutrient materials. We have a lot of horses out here that we switch to barefoot, and after switching and getting them on an appropriate diet, they really don't need their feet done too often. Because we have a lot of brood mares and stuff that it's really difficult for us to get the farrier out, and our main farrier just left. So hopefully he'll be back soon. He's supposed to be gone for the summer, but hopefully he'll come back soon. And because our other farrier is not a super nice one, and he's not touching my horse. So I'm in a bit of a predicament myself with the farrier situation, but like I was saying, a lot of our horses that have switched to more nutritionally appropriate diets have not really needed to have their feet done. And we've put out some different types of rocks around their water troughs so that they break them off naturally themselves. Obviously, this has to be done with care, and if their feet are already sore and sensitive, or if they don't have tough soles, that could be asking for a stone bruise or an abscess. So obviously take that with a grain of salt to make sure that your nutritional program is solid and your horse's feet are on the right track before doing that, to anybody listening. But to Charlotte, I would say, yes, work towards making the area better. But Charlotte also goes on to say that she's been trying to get other people to help her handle him, but it's just been challenging, and there aren't many people I believe in to not get angry if he makes a mistake. Would love any tips or advice you have on farrier work with positive reinforcement, especially when the farrier does not appreciate you giving snacks. I will definitely update on my current plans if I actually motivate myself to do them before you can answer. So, this is what I'll say, and I know that this is, oh my God, my cat is twitching on my microphone, and I need you to stop, Bubby. You're making sounds. He's our bunny pets right this instant, and only on my neck, nowhere else. Okay, so this is the thing that I have to say that nobody likes to hear, but at the end of the day, you employ your farrier, and I think it goes a long way to be very clear in communication. And instead of just like, oh, I kind of want to feed my horse, is that okay? What I would do is, shoot him a text or call him or whatever and ask if you can have a second to chat about something and that you have an idea. And then I would hop on the phone and just pitch the idea. For me, that might go something like, hi, Mr. Farrier Man. I have, as you know, we've been having a lot of issues with my horse. I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of work with him with positive reinforcement to help create a better association and help increase his clarity and understanding of what we want and what we're asking for, because my goal is to keep you safe, to keep me safe, and keep my horse safe. I want him to be the perfect angel child and stand for you and not irritate you and not get you hurt. That is my primary goal. And I would really, really love it if I could pay you to come out and just work with me. You don't have to trim his feet or anything, but if you'll come out and handle him with me, I will pay you the same that I pay for the footwork. But I need him to associate it with you. I've got it really good with me. He'll let me pick up his feet and hold them for however long, and I can mess with him, but I don't have anybody that's willing to work with me, so I can't generalize this behavior that he's now learned to other people. So he's still a little bit distrusting, but I really think that if you would be willing to work with me on this and give it a shot, that we could get to a place where he would feel comfortable and be willing to, stand and not be wiggly or making you upset or upsetting me or making me nervous, because now I'm that jerk that's got this wiggly horse that's going to hurt my farrier, because I really don't want that to happen. And if you'll just give us a chance, I will pay you for your time. I would really appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this. Is that something that you would be open to trying? I know it sounds a little bit woo-woo and weird, but I have done a lot of research into it and looking into the science, and I really think that this would be an effective way for us to solve the issues we've been having, but I need your help. And concluding my phone call there, that's not easy to do. I will be the first to say it. I have such an issue with typically traditional professionals, because it can be really hard to pitch an idea like that, but just be like, this is not something that I'm trying to teach you how to do. I literally just need your body so that he can associate this with you. So maybe that's something that you would be willing to give a try. I know it can be scary, but it can't hurt to ask. The worst he can do is say no. And then you can say, all right, well, I'll do my best to work with other people when I can, but I'm doing my best. And like I said in the answer to the first question, the alternative is to sedate, which sucks, but we have had to do it with several of ours that, just didn't have their feet done for a while, and just to get them through or new horses particularly too, were difficult. But now we've gotten everybody to a point where they are like, oh, my feet feel amazing after this. This is great. So, but yeah, I would go through with that and just really outline that you're trying to make your best efforts to help keep everyone safe and make it as seamless as as possible. And you don't want it to be a waste of his time, but that you just, you want to help your horse get better at this, and you need help. So make it a collaborative process, see if you can get it done. And if not, then maybe just ask if you can sedate him for it so that he'll be more still and nobody will get hurt. Like I said in the first question, it is not my first choice of solution to problems, but sometimes it just has to be done in order to maintain the welfare of the horse. So that's kind of where we're at. I think that's all I have to say. I hope it goes well for you guys, and I hope that you guys listening learned something and that you weren't totally bored with me just breaking down everything, but I feel like it's important for me to update everyone so that we're all on the same page and we can move forward. So hopefully I will see you guys next week and have an episode ready for you. Like I said, I've got a couple interviews that I want to get recorded, but it really all depends on scheduling, because typically people want to record during business hours, but during business hours I'm kind of like on call, so to speak, and I never know if I'm going to have enough time during the daytime to host an interview. So I'm going to do my best. I really appreciate you guys listening and hanging in there with me. If you're still listening, thank you. If you don't mind, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a review for the podcast. It helps boost it in the algorithm. And check out my website. We got a lot of new exciting things coming. All the resources are there. And I am just ready to get into a routine and start actually working with the freaking horses again, so that I have some things to talk about, because it's like the past couple of weeks I just have not had anything to talk about because I haven't been working with the horses, so I'm not inspired. I haven't had to research or dive into anything. So outside of saddle fit, and it's a private course, so I have to be double checking what I say about it so that it doesn't, I'm not giving away industry secrets because it is a paid course. So, but, there will be more on that later. But Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at EquiTheory and JETEquiTheory. If you have any questions about Patreon or would like to inquire about any ponies or anything like that, feel free to shoot me an email at equitheory@gmail.com. The ponies, I mean, for horse sales. I don't know if I talked about that earlier in this episode. I emailed somebody about a horse in the middle of it. So we do have horses available for sale. They're up on my website under sales. So check that out. I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you guys endlessly for listening and hanging in there with me with my inconsistency. I apologize again, and I'm ready to get back to normal. So I will catch you guys next week, and stay safe out there. Be kind to your ponies and live your life. I'm going to go. Thank you guys for listening. I'll catch you next week.